Welcome to the video series of Data Engineering on Microsoft Azure DP 203. Hope you guys are doing well and staying safe. In today's video, we will cover the following topics. The first one is designing an Azure Data Lake solution that will be on Azure Data Lake Gen 2. Recommended file types for the storage in Data Lake, recommended file types for analytical queries, designing the data lake for efficient querying, and the last is designing the folder structure that represent the different levels of data transformation. So when we are designing a data lake, there are various considerations need to be accounted, such as data lake structure, which means how we want to organize the data, file types, file formats, and also we need to think about the high availability and disaster recovery scenarios too. And the last piece is the data security. Data security is like how we're going to govern our data lake data. This section I won't be covering in this video. It will be covered in the security section of this video series. So this diagrams give you a high level of structure of data lake, which tells you the different layers of it. So you can look at this, like the first layer is the storage account, second is file system, and the last one is Jones directories and files. Basically, this is like a folder hierarchy structure. We're going to look into all of them in detail. First, we'll start with the storage account. There are so many properties that need to be configured while creating an Azure storage account. The first one is the performance tier. Performance, there are two types of performance tiers, standard and premium. Standard, which is recommended for most of the scenarios. Premium, it's recommended for scenarios where we require low latency. Replications, it's used for high availability and disaster recovery, which we'll see in the upcoming slides in more details. Access tier, how we want to access it. So there are two types of it, hot and cold. Hot means it's like a frequent access and day-to-day usage. Cold is like an infrequent access for backup scenarios and archive and all those kind of things. Connectivity method is like how we want to connect our storage account, either publicly on a public network, private network. Depending on your requirement, we have to select our connectivity method. Secure transfer required is a property which enhances the security of our storage account by allowing only those REST API requests which are HTTPS. So if somebody trying to request our storage account using HTTP, they won't be able to access it. And the last property is hierarchical namespace. That's escalate our big data analytics workloads and enable file level access. So let's look into the replication. Replication is very important for high availability and disaster recovery from disaster recovery perspective. So there are only four types of replication methods available: locally redundant, Joan redundant, Joan redundant storage. So locally redundant storage, it's happened within the same data centers. There will be synchronously 3 copies will be created. So if any disk failure or hardware failure, these kind of situations happen, this replication will take care of it. And this is like recommended for those applications which are not criticals or anything which we can build again very fast. And it provides durability of 11 nines. Joan redundant storage application is basically synchronously 3 copies are created in availability zones, and if a data center goes down, still our storage account will be there because other data centers are working. This is also for those applications which work or for the storage which are applications which are specific to a region. If one data center goes down, we still be able to access it through the other zone, but the whole region goes down, then then we won't be able to access the storage account. For that, we need to use GRS, Georedundant Storage Application. So Georedundant Storage Application is basically create synchronously 3 copies as a local redundant storage and asynchronous copy to the secondary region of our RS, and there synchronously again create 3 copies of it. So in this case, if our primary region goes down, we still be able to access the data through secondary region. This is like for the critical applications. And GeoZone redundant storage is basically everything which we have in GRS, but instead of LRS, in our primary zone we use GRS. So synchronously zone redundant storage are created in all availability zones, and then asynchronously data is copied to the secondary region, and they're synchronously copied again using LRS within the same data center. Yeah, so like one thing you might have noticed is like RA. So here it says RAGJRS, and this is RAGRS. So that is read-only access to the secondary region. So by default, it's not active. So either user or Microsoft has to activate it. And once read-only access is activated, we can access this data in all the times, including if a disaster, if an actual disaster happened. File system. File system basically is like a, I'll say, it's the container. It's the other way. Like if you go to the Azure storage account, the storage account is the main, and the second layer is the container. I call it file system because it works like that. So container is basically that holds the hierarchy of our folders and files. We'll see both, like we sell all these things in the demo. The next thing comes like zone directories and files. Basically, zone is the root level of the folder hierarchy, and after that we'll have various directories depending on like a source of the data, data type, and all those kind of things, and our partitioning and all those factors. But this picture give you like a very clear understanding of things like how we want to do. So storage account is our main thing, file system, or like this should be the container, and in this layer, like basically we'll create folders. So this will be a raw folder, then curated folder, and in that folder, like in raw, we could have different subject areas and then different data sources. Then after that, depending on partitioning, we can have further folders. So zone basically, as I mentioned, it's the root level folder hierarchy, and it can be of many types, but these are the mains which should be there. But it's not like a exhaustive. You can have more than these. So there will be mainly, but all these, like these files can cover all the zones. So one is the raw, cleaned, curated, sensitive, and laboratory. Raw, which is also known as bronze zone, here is the location where the raw data lands from the various applications, and this should be immutable. That means like once data landed, it should be locked down head and only have read-only permission, so users won't be able to manipulate the data. And this zone we can further organize based on folders per application or something like that. Next is the clean zone. Clean zone next is the next zone, which is also called, in some places you might, some people call it staging, or it could be very, but like there is no hard and fast rule for the naming conventions. But clean basically is where we remove the unnecessary fields, records, do some kind of like aggregations, joins, and all those. So here is basically we apply the rules and enrich the data. Curated is basically is the conception layer where we do the advanced analytics or data science kind of things. Sensitive is a zone where we lens all the sensitive data, or you can say classified data, which have personal PIA, personal identification information, and laboratory where data analyst or scientist can play with the data until like it's productionized, or they I won't say play, but like basically you can say like they developed their analysis here, and after that you can productionize it. Okay, so next is the directory or the folder. So Joan, as I mentioned, is the root, but after that you need to create directories. So you can see that here different folder structures are there, like what the subject area, what's the data source, year, date, month, date formats. It's not like there is no hard rule around it that you have to follow this. It could be based on your requirements or what you want to achieve. So for folders or directory, there has to be few things which we need to keep in mind. First, it need to be human readable, understandable, consistent naming conventions. And each folder should have files of the same schema and format. So like for example, in this day folder, we should not have different types of files. We should have same schema file and types or format. And to optimize the performance of our queries, this need to be aligned with the partitioning strategies. We will see the partitioning strategies in upcoming videos, but directories need to be aligned with the partitioning strategies. And the last is the file format and the file size. So Parquet has been like the most popular size in the lake, but it not necessarily is the only choice. It can depend on like situations and which zone you are. So for example, in raw zone, you can have JSON, CSV, XML, or even like Parquet too. Non-raw zones like any columnar format, especially Parquet or Delta Lake, are the good choice. And the other thing, like which I want to mention, is about the file size. So Lake work well if we are if the file sizes are big. If we have very small file sizes, like the performance will be horrible. So one scenario could be, let's say if we are using Lake as a storage for our stream analytics, in that case, like there will be very small files, and then we need to compress them. So like when we are querying them, like it's bigger in size, and we are able to get the optimal performance out of it. So the idea is to avoid like a small file sizes in data lake. Some general information about the Azure Data Lake Gen2. The first one is the usage. So the usage is like it's used in the big data analytics world, and storage, and it used as a storage for various compute services in Azure, such as Azure Synapse Analytics, Azure Databricks, Azure Stream Analytics, Azure HD Insights. And to query data, this is a driver which is used as Azure blobs file system. And the last piece about the performance, as we so there are like two things which we need to keep in mind. One is the structure of your data, which we were talking about. Like it need to be in proper folder structures and proper file formats and file size. Otherwise, like it like it query will be, or you can say the performance will be not that good. So we need to keep those things in my mind, like to have a proper folder structures, file types. And the other thing is, like if you are ingesting data directly into Azure Data Lake Gen2 through an application or something, then we need to keep few things in mind, like what's the source hardware, how it look like, is it strong enough to ingest a good amount of data. And second is like network connectivity. Like there could be like in some situations the connectivity could be slow, so keep these things in mind to optimize the performance. Okay, yeah, so now let's jump to the demo. Perfect. So I've already created like a storage account with the name Data Tech CRM, and as you can see, we have our data lake, storage, file services. These they all four together are part of the storage account. So let's look at the data lake storage. So as you open it, like in the container, so Data Lake Text CRM is the storage account, and these are the zones we have in there. So you can look at the clean zone, curated, lab, raw, sensitive. So based on like it's the root of all the our folder hierarchies. If you go into raw, then like types, data types, or I won't say data type, like data sources. So one is the sales data, other is the customer data, and depending on your scenario, you can have other things. Then next, in your directory, like in sales also, it could be of multiple types, let's say online sale, point of sale. So based on that, you can have another folder hierarchy. And then this is like what comes from partitioning. Like now we are partitioning the data based on the year, month, and day. So I know there is like no data, but look at this. This is the zone. This is the directory structure. But in partitioning, you will see that this top, like year, this is like a classic example of date, month, and year. These are the classic example for partitioning the data. And so this is like your container, then zone, your files, and folder structure is there. So this is like I already created this, so I want to show you how the directories and zone, like how can you create zone directories and folders. Now I want to show you the, if you want to create I want to show you the storage account properties. So click on create. Okay, so these are the subscription, and the source groups are the general information which we need to provide. And after that, storage account, like you give the name to the storage account. Let's give it Data Tech CRM2. And after that, this is the reason, and this is our like prime reason. There will be a secondary reason associated to it which we don't know, like that's Microsoft take care of it. Performance, standard, and primary, which we discussed, like standard is for most scenarios, and this is for Data Lake Gen2 account. But primary, if you want to go for low latency kind of scenarios. And redundancy, which we talk about, there are like 4 types of redundancy, so you can pick whatever redundancy you want for your storage account. Let's do this. Then in advanced, so this is the secure transfer I was talking about. So this is by default selected, so don't change it, but this is the main, like one of the main things. And access tiers, hot and cold, how you want to access it. And this is really important, like Data Lake for Data Lake Gen2, we have to enable the hierarchy namespace. If we don't enable the hierarchy namespace, we won't be able to get the folder structures. It will be like a virtual directory. So, and then we won't be able to get all the functionalities of Azure Data Lake Gen2. It will work as a blob storage if we don't check this. Okay. Networking. This is the thing we discussed, like how we want to connect to our storage account through public, private, or public endpoint with selected. Data protections, like if you want blob storage and all those, soft deletes, and for containers and file shares and all those. So it's by default. I haven't changed anything. There are like few things. As soon as we select the hierarchy namespace, like these options, some options are grayed out. So Azure Data Lake Gen2 is built on top of Azure Blob, but it not have all the features. Some features of Blob still is only available in Blob, not in Azure Data Lake. And from encryption point of view, as Microsoft already or Azure already encrypt your data with so that's that's a good point for our data security perspective. And that's it. Like after this, like do the validation, you can check all those things, and if you click on create, it will create the like storage account. And there, once you have the storage account, it will be look like this. Like go to your like storage explorer and look at your containers, and there like you can go to raw. You can access this way, or even you can go to overview and you can access directly from here too. So that's all for this video, and I have another video on Azure Data Lake Gen 2 which talks specifically what it is and all those kind of things. So I'm going to provide the link of that link in the description, but the focus of this video was to how to design it, what things need to keep in mind like while designing, and to understand the properties and all those kind of things. And this is like really important from Azure DP 203 perspective. So stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.